having question answer session at the end. So whoever has any question, you can put it on the chat. Our experts will be there to answer. So welcome Nilanjan, welcome Sumit, and I'll request you to take this session ahead.
Thanks, Vaishali, for that very nice introduction and very pleasant words about me and a very justified introduction to my old friend Sumit. And thank you once again, everybody, for joining us today. As you know, the coronavirus pandemic has wreaked havoc uh, in various segments and countries and sectors. And higher education, obviously, is a pretty deeply impacted sector as well. So, in today's webinar, our agenda, our objective is to discuss some of those changes impacting the higher education sector and also try and give some guidance to our student community at large, to the audience today, about things they should keep in mind while finalizing their overseas education plans, especially in the light of coronavirus. So in today's session, we will talk about all such changes, including university level changes, government immigration level changes. We will also talk a little bit about future forward, how the world will look like in terms of placements and job opportunities, say 1-2 years from today, which will be basically directed at students who will start their studies now and will complete it in a year or two. And at the end of the session, as Vaishali said, we will have a question answer session. Please feel free to type in your questions in the chat window. We will answer it at the end of the session on a first come, first served basis. And also, please do keep yourself muted. Otherwise, it gets very difficult for others to understand what's going on. So those are my requests. Having said that, we will get started today with our discussions first, which will last about 30 minutes. And then we will do a 10 to 15 minute question answer session. So Sumit, how is it going? How are you doing? I met you last, I don't remember when, a lot has happened from then. So how are you coping? How is Yocket coping with the virus, with the pandemic? Are you guys open for your services? How are you handling student queries, etc.?
Yeah, a lot has happened. I think lot is an understatement what has happened in the past couple of months. How are we coping? I think we've been online, so it's not been a big deal for us. But yes, I think what's happening outside is something which is scary for I think everyone around the whole world. About our services, so when we saw that this is happening, we knew that students are definitely going to be facing a lot more. I would say stress because of the uncertainty. They would not know what's happening and all. So first thing we did was we launched a helpline for students, profile consultation helpline, and I'm happy to say that we've serviced more than 3,000 students on that. So 3,000 students have reached out to us, and this was something totally free of cost for students. We just wanted to be there for the students at this time, and we saw that there were genuine students, there were genuine queries. People were scared, and it just helped them for them to know someone was there on the other end to help them out and understand the problem. Also, we knew that this whatever we say is not going to be enough. We wanted to make sure that it comes from the universities as well, and we had launched around university webinar series. So we did around 100 webinars with different universities across the world, and we saw some great response from each. We reached out to around 30, like we reached out to around 12,000 students with that. So that webinar did really help in helping clear out the doubts for students. That was really helpful. And right now, what we're doing is that we are going to be launching a virtual fair for students. So there are already 75 universities who have signed up for that. The virtual fair is happening on the 10th of July. So yeah, these are all our efforts to make sure that students, at any point, students are not left alone. We are helping them with all these things. And also our premium services have been there. So people who have been enrolled with us in the past, for the last fall, we've extended the services for the coming fall as well. So we have given them a leeway for that, and our premium services are open. So students who are interested can at any time like are still able to enroll. So we are doing some good number of enrollment of students. And our services have not been impacted because we've always been online and we were used to working remotely. So that's something which has helped us a lot, I would say. Vis-a-vis like someone else who had to shift everything offline from offline to online. For us, we have been doing this online, so it's been something we've not been much impacted in that sense, I would say.
Great, great. Thanks, Sumit.
How is it at your end, Nilanjan? How are things there? Are you guys still seeing good education loan questions?
Yeah. So thanks for that information. I obviously want to come back and ask you about what these universities are saying through these webinars, etc., that you are conducting. But before that, like you asked, as I was telling you a little bit earlier, that life has actually become really hectic in due to coronavirus, and that's because our Sumit, give me a second. Let me just mute a couple of people. I think some.
I'm doing that. You can carry on. I'm doing that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sumit. So obviously life became very hectic because it was not only work from home, but also household work like cooking, cleaning, because the maids and the domestic helps couldn't come in. So it got really hectic. But having said that, it was probably better to be overburdened with work during a lockdown rather than sitting idle at home. So not much to complain there. In terms of INCRED, just like YOCAID, INCRED's internal processes were online and tech based, so it wasn't a very difficult transition for us. We were able to move on to the online remote ways of working very quickly. In terms of our student community, we reached out to all the students that took loans from us and are attending universities, 600 plus universities in 25 different countries. We reached out to all of them to understand their well-being, their health care, whether they're facing issues in finishing the course or getting jobs and things like that. And after 2 months of that outreach program, so we called their parents in India, everything, we understood that most of them thankfully are okay. So that was a good bit of news for us. Obviously, the course completion date is getting extended for some students, because the semester, especially the fall semester in countries like US, etc., may not happen. So it may extend their course completion date or graduation date a little bit, but obviously we have made some internal arrangements, etc., to work with those students and ensure that we give them extra time to get their EMI started. In terms of new students who want loans, the demand is there. We are getting, about 50 to 60 applications every day for loans, which we are completely doing online because it is an online system. And also INCRED's, enhanced updated software system just got launched. Matter of fact, my team will reach out to you probably next week to integrate that system with your system as well. So students do not have to come to our branches. They can sit at home and apply for the loan online. They can get a decision online. They can pay the processing fee online. They can download the sanction letter online. So all of that is, we already kicked that into process. All of that, the beta launch has happened. The final launch will probably happen within a matter of next 2 weeks or so. So from internal employee, external customer orientation, yes, we have did a lot of work to move everything online so that people don't run into too many problems trying to apply for a loan at INCRED. So this is what we are doing in terms of how we have modified ourselves.
What is the cost of this appointment, sir?
Sorry, guys. If you guys have any questions, just type it in the chat pane. We will get to it at the bottom of at the end of this session. So coming back to discussions about universities and programs and different countries, what is going on, Sumit, from whatever information you have gathered over the last 2-3 months, interacting with students and also with universities? Are there specific trends that are surfacing in terms of which countries students are preferring now, and whether they are deferring their admission or they are still planning to go this time? So can you share a little bit information on that from your perspective?
Yeah, so we don't see like a very definitive trend. I see that this is like you can see this is not impacted just one country or two countries. It's something which is prevalent over the world. So you can see the mobility across the world is in fact impacted. And in that sense, I feel that what most students were looking at earlier are still looking at that same thing with a deferred plan. That's what most of them are doing. We recently did a survey as well to see what are the students options after this. Like, are they moving out of US? Are they looking at other countries? So education, I think, is not something which is like a knee-jerk reaction. People have a very thought through process. They have thought through why they're going to go to this place, why are they doing this, and it's something which takes some good amount of preparation. So someone who's prepared for US is not going to suddenly all of a sudden just say that, okay, because XYZ country is opening, I'm going there. He would rather stay his course, maybe not right now, 2 months later, 3 months later, 6 months later, he'll go to that course. These are all mostly graduate students, so they do not mind taking that 6 months. And also they all have an option of starting the courses online. So from the country perspective, I see that the way it was pre-COVID, it's the same thing which is there post-COVID as well. I don't see that it's going to happen. It's going to change unless there are going to be some major drastic regulations which change. I don't see that there will be a lot of changes from students. And on the I would say on the education front, that's the main thing, because again, education system is something which not any country can just start up within like few 6 months or so. It's a overall ecosystem which has to be taken care. There's a lot of research involved. There's a lot of endowments involved, a lot of companies involved. So that's something which is not going to happen so easily, I would say. So it still remains as the most favored nation for among the tech students. Definitely among the tech guys, it's still the most favored nation. Coming to the second point, you said that what are the universities saying? I think the universities are trying their best to ensure that they're able to open the campus this fall itself. From most of the universities that I'm talking to, a few of them, like again in the US, if you see, the situation is very much dependent on each state. Each state is having their own different kind of curves. So most of the states where things are fine, they're going to be starting the on-campus classes soon. For international students, there's some provisions that they're making is that one, they can also always start their courses online and then move to the campus whenever the campus opens, whenever they get visas. Another thing that a lot of universities are contemplating is that they're going to look at another small fall intake. So I was talking to one of the universities, said that rather than just, so they will have fall 1 and fall 2. So fall 2 might start sometime in September, October. So they might have like a very, it's something going to be like a small semester. It's going to be a mini semester. That's what someone had said also. So something like that is something that they're considering. Also, a lot of universities are offering good amount of scholarships right now, in fact, if people are doing this. Some of the students, some of the universities are even like, if you're starting your courses online, they're offering some good amount of discounts on tuitions as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of things happening. So a lot of universities have written to the DHS to consider CPT and OPT, CPT specific CPT for these students to be considered. They don't have to focus on the 9 months rule in this case. So that's also happening. So a lot of things the universities are doing a lot from their end. That certainly is there. Again, now it depends on which university each one is going to, and they have to see what the rules are there for those specific universities.
Yeah. Great. I think very good information for our students to know that indeed colleges are, universities are if I may call it, desperate, or maybe may not be the right word, but they do need students, and especially international students. And a big reason for that, obvious reason for that, is international students are a very good revenue stream for these universities. So if that dries up, the universities run into all kinds of financial trouble. So obviously they will want to, not forego the fall semester completely. They will want to have some revenue line coming in there. And from that angle, the point you mentioned about colleges giving scholarships, etc., are very pertinent points that our student community should know about. And obviously for online classes, the tuition fees have been reduced. In the US, what I noticed, the summer semester was online in almost all the universities, and the summer semester fees were almost 50% of a regular fee. So they did drop the fee quite a bit. But going back to what you said earlier, are you, Sumit, recommending to students that if they have their eyes set on, say, a US degree or or say a Canada degree or say Australia degree, just because of COVID, they shouldn't switch the country completely. They should wait and see how things move. Worst case, they should defer their plans for 6 months or more. But are you suggesting that students should, if they have done research to find out which course, which college, which country, they should try and stick to it and not just randomly switch because of coronavirus?
Yeah, and again, I think that this is not something which is impacting just one country. If it was one country, I can understand that, okay, this is something which is impacted and it's not going to be there anywhere else. So, like there were some cases where I heard someone said that, he's not going to now go, like there was someone who was advising that don't go study abroad, now study in India itself. I said that which colleges in India are open right now? What are you going to study in India? Some of the Indian schools do not even have that infra of delivering remote classes. How are you going to be, what kind of an advice is this? What is the basis of this? Like for a 6 months delay, maximum, that's what I'm saying, a 6 months delay, are you going to be ruining your career or things that you planned for like you have actually planned for it for at least a year? And you want to, like, I wouldn't suggest that anyone takes a decision in haste. And this is not something which is happening to one person, one country. It's a thing which is happening around the world. You don't know, today somewhere here, somewhere in few weeks, there will be another hotspot which comes anywhere. So nothing is right now. You cannot like.
I agree. No, yeah, well said. Sorry to interrupt you. I also wanted to say that not only the future trajectory also goes haywire, right? The return on investment on an overseas degree, that is a very steep incline, positive incline post your degree. If you let go of that and decide to stay in India and do a course here, you are not only wasting your efforts of the last 2 years, you are also probably wasting the probability of you getting a very kick-ass job and a very kick-ass career post your studies in the US or Canada or wherever it may be. So you are right. Let me also expand on a little bit about what I feel here after understanding your viewpoint on how students should not throw their study plans out of the window or change it drastically because of coronavirus. I think that if you are a student and are torn between whether to study now or to defer your admission, my clear vote would be to do a deferral. It is not such a bad idea. The deferral, obviously, if you are targeting a US, so the US story. So when coronavirus started, Europe was the epicenter. It quickly moved on to New York. New York and the East Coast is more or less under control now, but then some other states such as Texas and Florida and California, they are going, the epidemic is going completely, berserk there. I mean, thousands and thousands of cases every day. When New York was speaking, US was getting 20,000 infections per day. Right now, last week, US is getting 50,000 infections per day. So my hope was that the US government would do enough to control the coronavirus by the time the fall semester came, or actually before that, so as to give international students some window to apply for the visas and all of that. However, I think that window of that scope is diminishing very rapidly for the US. Even if the US controls the virus in the next 1 month, it's too late to start the fall in August. And also it's too late to get the visas and immigration processing done. So I am a little bit disappointed with the US development, but if you have your eyes set on US, I think a good option would be to defer your admission and not go to the UK or Canada or something like that. The US will definitely rebound. It has a history of rebounding after every big crisis. In 2008, the last big financial crisis, the OPT, STEM OPT of 3 years, it was launched in 2008. And then 2010, when the lockdown, or not the lockdown, the financial crisis came under control, the US witnessed years of record growth and record job creation and lowest unemployment. So every time after a big recession or financial crunch, the US has a very strong history of rebounding. Also, what happens during a recession or a lockdown or some kind of a global crisis is college enrollments actually go up, because students or the public at large, because of the uncertainty and job loss, they go back to university to study, to get better equipped, to get a better job after the recession. So because of all of these trends, I think it makes sense for people to, if they want to defer it, defer it. However, the deferral year, which is the 1 year starting today, and for 1 more year, during the deferral year, these students should do something constructive. And what I mean by doing something constructive is they can do an internship, they can get some work experience, they can do some research, they can learn a new language, traveling is not an option. So I wouldn't say they can travel a little bit to learn other cultures and all of that. But if you construct or do some online certifications, learn Python or learn R or some tool, if you can fruitfully utilize the 1 year from today till next intake, I think deferral is not a very bad plan. Okay. And that brings me to my next question. What is your opinion of $1 million question amongst educators and students is, what is your opinion of online classes? Are you recommending it? Do you think it's not a good idea? Do you think it's a subjective call students need to take depending on their personal scenario and the country and the college, etc.? So can you share some views on that, Sumit?
Yeah, so like at the start of this itself, I had seen that, there will be a lot of people who will be, or universities launching online classes, and, students will have to make those decisions. So I had written an article, posted on LinkedIn as well. So any of you students want to check that out, you can check that out. So in that, the main thing what I see is that education, you can see that there are two aspects to education. One is the knowledge aspect and the other is the engagement aspect. So knowledge is something which can be transferred online. It's something which is purely something where, you do not need to be there in person. Whereas the engagement part, that includes maybe the research, interacting with your peers, interacting with seniors, interacting with professors, all of that. The engagement part is something which, you would want to actually be on campus for that. So if the universities understand that and they are able to deconstruct the course in such a way that they are able to give out certain courses online, which does not have so much of an engagement part in them, and they do not have to complete the degree online. It's just 1 semester online, a few credits online. I think there's no harm in starting the course online. Of course, and another big advantage is that you save a lot on living expense. You don't have to spend anything on the living expense if you're going there. A lot of universities are offering good tuition discounts on these courses. So I think this could be a great boon for some people, who could start, and they could also continue to do their work here. If they are working professionals, they can continue to do their work here and simultaneously take these classes. So this could be a very cost-effective way, but again, it has to be done in the right way if students are comfortable doing it that way. And I'm saying that doesn't have to be a complete online course. It can be something just a few credits online. Also, one thing very important I feel could be great is that if you're doing these courses online, you have a good progression to see as well. the professor also has a good progression for to see that how you're performing. And when you go on campus, there are high chances you might get assistantships. Also, the visa officer has some good amount of backing to see that you have this is your progression for your course. So you are well invested into your primary purpose of education is well seen in that course. Yeah. The only thing is that we do not have a lot of precedents on this, and that is why it's a fear of novelty which students will come up with. There will be some early adopters. Not universities do not. A lot of universities don't have that kind of infra where they had thought through this, and it's something which is happening so fast. So in this case, I would again say, like as you said, that each one should see what their university is willing to offer them, what kind of customization are they giving them, and if they're giving you some kind of good tuition discount, I think it's not a bad idea.
Great, great. So at the cost of sounding like I am agreeing to everything you are saying, I do agree to you with a couple of conditions. And I'd like to say that for the benefit of our audience today, I think a completely online course is avoidable, completely online. 1 semester or so is okay. The reason you should avoid a completely online course is because the one of the key advantages of a abroad degree in a physical environment, physical classes where you go, is your environment itself, because you get to mix with people from all over the world, exchange ideas. You will be sitting with the best GRE students from China, Korea, Latin America, Spain, Russia, US, Canada, India, Bangladesh, everywhere. And it's a very, foreign university campuses are a very, very diverse and a very vibrant community. You get to learn a lot just by being there. Okay, obviously you get the in-class curriculum, subject, technical knowledge also, but that problem solving outside of class, making new friends, talking to people from diverse backgrounds and cultures, all of that put together is the USP of a foreign degree. And an online format, while you will get some of the technical know-how and the curriculum transfer will happen, the other element of the environment and being with people and great ideas being exchanged from with people all over the world and professors and all of that will definitely go away. And therefore, I think that 1 semester online, more of a blended format, you do 1 semester online, then go for physical classes is fine. But a completely online semester is probably not going to give you that impact that you want from a regular physical overseas degree. So that's one. Second is, I think students should keep in mind the immigration policies of the government in terms of how they're looking at the online class. Okay, so this is again a very country specific subject. For example, Canada has already taken a favorable stance towards online classes, and they have said that the course can be done, 50% of the course can be done online, and still the student will be eligible for the student visa and as well as the post-graduation work permit, which allows them to stay back in Canada and study. So Canada looks like an okay country at this time to pick up an online course. However, nothing concrete has been declared by some of the other so US has so although the summer semester in US was made online, and also, as you rightly said, United States Immigration and Citizen Services, ICE, DHS, they made the changes to where online remote work was being accepted for CPTs and OPTs, so all of those changes they did, and they did take a favorable stance towards these kind of issues. However, for the fall, they haven't decided yet. And I think, again, the window has become too small for them to decide now whether online classes US government will allow or not. Okay. On online courses, my 2 points on top of everything Sumit said is, understand, don't do the entire course online. That's one. And the second point, understand the immigration policy of that government, whether the online class is eligible for student visas and also for the post-graduation work permit. If those two are checks, obviously, you can go for an online course. Some advantages are you will pay a lower cost, tuition fees will be lower, living expenses will not be there. and so on and so forth. So this is what I wanted to talk about on online courses a little bit. Um, Moving on, Sumit, have you, what is your idea of, some of the universities are changing their grading patterns from a GPA based to a pass-fail kind of a grading pattern. Some of them, are waiving off the GREs and the English and all of that. So do you think this is benefiting the students? Are you in touch with students who actually got benefited from the GRE getting waived off and got admission without GRE? And what can you tell us on this topic, briefly?
So I think on this part, I think there will be some winners and some losers.
Yeah.
Someone with great GRE will be the one who will suffer. Someone with low GRE will be the ones who will benefit. Again, this is one term thing I feel. It's not something which is changing their course forever. It's not that they are waiving of GRE forever. It's just to be a GRE for this specific term. So I would say that anyone who has not done well in GRE, taken multiple attempts and still not done well, or has does not want to take more attempts, I think this is a great time for you to apply. Maybe then you want to defer, you can defer it. But if you don't have a great GRE, this is the only window I think you'll get where such relaxations will be possible. No GRE, no application fee, a lot of things. So high scholarship. So this could be a great time to actually apply. Someone who can score well on GRE, maybe I think they can always take the GRE at home option, and they could start with GRE. So GRE is another. It was never that the admissions into the US university was never dependent on one single factor. GRE was always one of the parameters, and I think right now when they do not remove that, there are other parameters that you have to be really strong on them. For someone who does not have a great holistic profile, for them GRE was helping them to show that they have done well. So the purpose of GRE again was a standardization. So that really helped a lot of universities to understand that. So I would say there'll be winners and losers both. So you have to choose on which side you are and make the most of it. I'm sure that even you guys would be looking at various factors when you are approving loans.
Yeah.
And GRE would be forming one of the important factors there as well. But now a lot of people are not taking GRE.
Yeah.
So
So very, very pertinent input there. I think winners and losers dono rahenge because of GRE getting waived. To come to INCRED, how INCRED is handling the no GRE GMAT kind of a loan application coming in. So it's I would say we are more on the losing side than the winning side on this. GRE was a very good indicator. The quant and the verbal percentiles, etc., were a very good indicator of the skill level or IQ level of a student. So what we have done is that we obviously have a scoring model on the student which takes into account their past ACAT, GRE, GMAT, college, course quality, work experience, and all of that. We have tweaked that formula to compensate for the no GRE. So that is, one way that we are looking at our assessments in the time of COVID when GRE GMATs are not coming in. And also we are also replacing some of our assessment with the university's decision. So if we see it's a really good university that has given a student admission by waiving the GRE, GMAT, TOEFL, and all of that, we are right now going as per that university's conclusion that this is a good student and I will admit him or her. So that's what we are doing. Also on the student side, couple of things we have done is that I know students are in two minds. Should I pay the processing fee and get the sanction letter from INCRED or another bank? And if I take the sanction letter and I decide to defer or I decide to do an online course, what will happen then? And all of those questions are there. So we have actually made a policy change where we are accepting a very token minimal amount of processing fee. Instead of 1%, we are taking 5 to 10,000 rupees because we understand people are uncertain. That gives them the ability to take the sanction letter and get their plans finalized. And whenever they come back to us saying that, okay, I have finalized my plan, we can take care of the rest of the process at that point. Obviously, if the student pays us the processing fee now and decides I will defer my admission to next fall, we will simply defer the processing fee to next fall also. So it will not be a loss for the student. Worst case, for a genuine reason, if they are not going, we will be able to give the processing fee back also. So all of those changes we have already done just to ensure that our students are in this time of uncertainty, they are not facing more challenges in terms of financing and all of that. I think we are running a little short on time, so I will move on to one of our important and last topics, is a future forward perspective. How do you see the world shaping up in 2 years' time, when the students right now will complete their MS degrees or their PGDMs and will enter the labor market? So to 2021, 2022, post-corona, if these students complete their MS degrees or PGDMs or MAs, whatever, and get into a labor market, what do you think they should look out for? What do you think they should plan right now? Do you think it will be a good world for them? Do you think there are certain areas which will be more in demand? Let us know what you think on that.
I think there are so many predictions happening. Everyone around is predicting some or the other kind of a future, and all of us predicting, I think. We don't know what is going to exactly happen. But if we look at the past, and the past has to be some kind of an indicator, I'm focusing my stuff only to the students and the student prospects, not looking at the economy, like not looking at much larger problems that are existing in the world. I'm going to be focusing on other part of the students' employability. I can see that every time there has been a downturn, that has been the best time to upskill yourself. And post that, the number of jobs that come up is very high. So you actually are going to be riding the wave when you actually get out of the when you get out of this of graduation. When you graduate, you're going to be riding the wave of economic boom, and so that makes it much easier. And this is something which I am not I would not say just predicting. What I'm saying is that this is something which has been happening in the past as well, and just taking cues from that, I can say that this looks like an obvious answer at this point, unless there is some other variable which I have not considered, or which the world at large has not considered. But from what I see, I think things are bouncing back. If you can see, employability in US and in India is bouncing back. The spends are bouncing back. So and this is not a financial crisis as such. This is a health crisis which has some impact, and it is spilling into the financial crisis. So there is enough pent up demand. There is a lot of I can see that, like, if things get back to normal, there will be quickly things should move in the right direction. So students, I would say that they should not worry after 2 years. Again, it's a long period as well. 2-3 years are there, and you never, who had expected 3 years back that this would happen. So you cannot discount all of that. And one thing is very important is that if you're skilling yourself, it's not going to waste. That's one simple thing I feel. Be it downturn, upturn, whatever it is. If it's a downturn and you're not skilled enough, you're not going to be better than anyone who is skilled enough. So in any worst case, also even in bad downturn as well, the persons who are skilled are at a much advantageous place. So I would say that in any case, education is not going to go waste. So focus on that part.
Yeah. Again, agreeing to you, but then let me also vocalize on a couple of points that I think our audience should keep in mind about education sector and employment opportunities once they graduate in a year or two. So look, Sumit, as you said, there was already a push towards technology, artificial intelligence, ML, analytics, cloud-based technologies. So there was already a push and a change in our industries coming in because of cutting-edge technology, which is a lot of it is AI driven, right? Automated cars, robotics, this, that, right? So there was already those particular courses, technology, STEM, they were already creating a massive footprint on all economies, all segments, even before coronavirus. And I think that post coronavirus, if anything, the stress on such technology will actually be more, right? It will get increased. And therefore, provided, the only caveat there is, we need to create a vaccine for coronavirus. Otherwise, the problem will keep on coming again and again. There will be a surge here, there will be a surge there. One state will open, another country will close. That will go in. Provided the world can come up with a coronavirus vaccine and we bring the coronavirus under control, the job market in 21, 22 should be really good for most of the students. And as long as you are a good student, willing to work hard, willing to take your classes seriously, and you get good grades in your MS or PGDM degree, the job opportunities for you will be endless. Let me also tell you that most of these governments and immigration departments, minus maybe Donald Trump, most of the other departments realize the value that international students are bringing to their countries. Not only are we bringing in, students are bringing in a lot of revenue into that country. So Indian students pump in $5-6 billion into the US economy every year. That is about 40,000 crore rupees that Indian students pump into the US economy every year. And other countries also, they keep pumping in, massive amounts of money. So this is a lot of positive impact on the country's economy that the government will not let go of. Also, in most of these countries, there is a shortage of STEM or technical labor. So that that shortage is typically taken care of by foreign students who came there to study. So obviously that demand will keep going up, and the demand for foreign students to take care of these tech-driven jobs will continue to be there. And therefore, we students who are uncertain right now about their future and all of that, don't worry. From all angles considered, we will have ample opportunities to exercise, your MS degree and your MS learning and convert it into a job. Let me also tell you about some interesting data. When we reached out to about 3,000 of our students who have completed their courses and are working in different countries, initially there were about a few students who were getting furloughed or getting a temporary layoff, but they were all temporary. Nobody got fired actually. And these are all students in high-tech jobs, with an Amazon or a Tesla or Microsoft, IBM, or even a lot of startup technology companies. And what we really saw was none of these students lost their jobs. They maybe got a reduced pay for 2-3 months, but then they are going back to that same company with a full salary. So nobody lost jobs, nothing happened. And that is our internal INCRED data showing that companies do not want to get rid of the rich talent that these international students are. Also, third point, from a government and immigration standpoint, I think most governments have taken a favorable stance so far towards students. For example, Canada not only said okay to online courses, they have also said okay to about 1,000 Canadian dollars per month to students who lost their jobs in Canada. So even Indian students who lost a job is eligible to get $1,000 from the Canadian government. Same thing happened in Ireland. They are eligible to get $1,200 from the Irish government if they have lost their job. Australia let students dip into their superannuation account and pull out funds from there to take care of emergency COVID expenses. Germany has floated a scheme to give interest-free loans to these students. So most of these governments are pretty friendly towards the students and the university segment in general. And also, I don't think they will do anything crazy to drive off this traffic, which is required to run the economy, to run the universities, and also to run the tech jobs or other jobs in that country. So all of this is what I can say in terms of how you should look at the future jobs prospects in various different countries around the world. And then coming to Trump, my last point there is on Trump. Look, Trump is up for re-election in November. I hope to God he loses. However, elections are can be a marketing, propaganda, and he may still end up winning if his campaign is really kick-ass and all of that. Having said that, I think that there has been a lot of concern about the H-1B ban that Trump did. And let me give you a 1 minute explanation of it. Actually, an interesting story. It was 4 in the morning that day when Trump declared the H-1B ban, and one of my borrowers who went to Carnegie Mellon to do the information security system course and then is working at Wayfair in Boston now. At 4 in the morning, he WhatsApped me with this news and the whitehouse.gov link to that particular decree of banning H-1B. 4 in the morning, and somehow weirdly I was up at that hour, so I went to the H-1B, White House website and looked through the declaration that Trump did and realized that this ban is only for people who are outside the US currently. So if you are a Amazon employee in Bangalore and Amazon gave you a H-1B and they were going to ship you to Seattle for 2 to 3 years, now you will not be able to go. So that ban is what Trump has done. For students who already have H-1B or are already on a STEM OPT or a normal OPT and already are in the US, this ban does not affect them at all. And matter of fact, I think that because the H-1B pool from overseas will now dry up, US employers will actually have to bank on the students within the US already to fulfill their positions. So it's in a sense, the ban will help students who are already in the US get H-1Bs more easier, is what I can tell you about the ban, okay? So this is where I can sum up my viewpoints on how the world will shape up in the future and immigration policies and how they will help us get jobs in the future in various countries. Any last comments, Sumit, from your side on the immigration part or anything in general, or on the job prospect part post-COVID? And once you have shared your last thoughts with us, we have 10, 12, 15 questions come in, so we will start answering those questions.
Yeah, so one thing I think you mentioned that Trump does not he does not talk much about students or anything. I would say that he definitely loves students, because at any point I've never seen him say anything about students.
Yeah.
So he has always said that he wants students to come there.
Yeah,
that's something which he's always said that. And about the H-1B one, I think very well you very well put it up, that whom does it actually impact. So this is something which is a very much, I feel like, as a marketing election gimmick, where there is minimum damage with maximum row. So that's what he's trying to do. People are anyway not traveling right now. There's no one who is actually so he's just stopped issuing new H-1B visas to people in this period of time. So it does actually impact is the Indian companies who are sending their employees, as you mentioned, that someone working in Amazon Bangalore, if he's being shipped to Seattle, he's going to have a problem. And that too, if it's not stamped on his passport. If he has it on the passport, it is not impacting them. Another thing I would say is that a lot of times students are very much unaware about the H-1B when their H-1B actually comes for them. When is it coming in their life cycle? So once you are on F1 for 2 years, you're going to be studying. After that, you're still on F1 with an OPT, and you have 3 years on that OPT. And after that is when you get into the H-1B. Now, again, as Niranjan said, that if new H-1s are not coming from outside, it has to be from within. So that's where students tend to gain. So very important facts, if you have to see, if you just go back a bit in the history and you see the time when H-1B was launched to the time when H-1B was actually 190,000 H-1Bs were issued every year. And then now it's brought down to 85,000. So whom has it impacted? It has actually impacted just the outsourcing companies which were shipping people from here to there.
Yeah.
And as every time when the H-1B has been reduced, the number of students has increased and their employability has gone up. So now what does the company has an option is that they can actually take up students who have actually done masters in the US vis-a-vis someone who has been working in Bangalore for 4 or 5 years. So the companies have to take someone who has done a master's there. So that actually becomes a great route for a lot of students to go and work in these companies. So I think that if you look at the graph of H-1B versus the education thing, whenever H-1B has gone down, education has actually gone up. because that is where the quality students will come for those companies. So there's a lot of times when people are, I would say that directly equating H1B to students. Students have nothing to do with H1B. He does not want anything to be touched to the students. He understands that very well.
Yeah.
He wants to target H1B to only the companies which are sending cheap talent from India. So again, I think that's we need not worry much about him. And again, people are of course, I'm not sure if he's going to get re-elected. I hope not. But if he does as well, I don't think that there's any level of policy changes brought down for students. It's always been, in fact, good, I think, for students. So there's nothing we need to worry about that.
To sum it up, I think it's a good time to be a student. Little bit uncertainty in terms of which country, college, on campus, or deferral, and all of that. However, I think the education industry as a whole, globally speaking, will be the industry that will bring the world out of coronavirus. Not only because they will create the research and the know-how required to control viruses such as the COVID virus and take care of better healthcare and better precautions coming up. So for example, Johns Hopkins University in the US, #1 in healthcare management and epidemic studies, virology, and all of that. And they work very closely with the United Nations to form these, and WHOs to form these global policies. And matter of fact, John Hopkins, whatever, I know somebody personally in my family who works at the UN and says that even the heads of the UN pretty much look at John Hopkins University as their guiding light when it comes to forming future policies in terms of healthcare management, globally speaking, public health, and all of that. So the small example, but I think universities will be, the education sector will be at the forefront of bailing the world out of coronavirus, because they will give the ideas to control such viruses and tackle such viruses in an effective manner in the future. Also, they will give the future angle and curriculum to all students in terms of what are those colleges, courses, subject areas that will be in demand in the future, and they will direct our students in that direction. And therefore, I really think, and also over the course of the last hour or so, Sumit and I have discussed on how job opportunities and enrollment opportunities actually become stronger and better post any kind of a global crisis. So putting all that together, I think there is a little bit of uncertainty still, mainly because there is no vaccine and the coronavirus is going on and on and on and with no end in sight. Some uncertainty, but in the long run, if you are a student, it's a good place to be. It is not as depressing, or it is not as of a horrible future, foreseeable future that you need to worry about. I think there will be ample opportunities. There will be more than ample opportunities for you to study and succeed. Yes, there will be some uncertainty for next 3 to 6 months before a vaccine and all that comes out. But don't
I would like, sorry to interrupt, Indra, but I would like to say that this uncertainty is the time when actually, some of them will make some great choices, I would say. That and this is the time when they have to take a small risk and they'll be getting much bigger gains, because again, this uncertainty has, if you can see, the universities have suddenly become so much more liberal in giving out scholarships and giving out admits. So sometimes you never thought that you could have got into that university with this scholarship. All of that is happening. I think this small uncertainty is actually coming at a very people who can, it can be a great opportunity for a lot of people.
Perfect. I agree. To everybody who's our audience today, if you need help on admissions, counseling, colleges, courses, information of all of that, feel free to get in touch with the Yocket team at any point. Simply go on to their website and you can start your inquiries and stuff like that, through their web portal. Similarly, if you need help in your education finance, get in touch with INCRED, go to our website, go to education loan and start your application. it's a completely online way application and inquiry and all of that. So do get in touch with us if you need more help, more information. Having said that, we have a few questions here, so we will move on to answering some of those today to the best of our ability. So the first question from Rohan is, do you foresee embassies in India open for United States? So I'm guessing US embassies, do we foresee them opening up in India? Chances are less, Rohan. The reason is mainly because India is now a hotspot also for the coronavirus. And I think if you look at India's infection curve, it is just going up and up and up and up and up. We don't know when it will plateau. We don't know when it will go down. And especially the cities where the US embassies are located, such as Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, they are all pretty badly impacted by the coronavirus. So I am not sure if the US government or the US embassies in these cities in India will actually open up their doors to the general public, because they are so scared of the infections. So I do not think the embassies, I think there is a very small chance that embassies will open up in a timely manner for fall visa applications for sure.
But
Anything you
Nilanjan, I
want
can
to
tell
add,
you
Sumit?
but one thing I want to tell you is that the first visa is going to be a student visa.
Yeah,
When they
certainly.
open up, it's going to be student visa going to be the highest priority. That's something which I can say.
Certainly.
Yeah. So when will they open up? It's not, there's no commitment from their end, and I don't think that there can be commitment till we actually see some kind of stability. That's right. But when they open up, I can tell you the student visas need not worry. You will all get the dates. There will be enough slots for students at that time.
Yep, I agree to it. Next is Akshay is asking, is anyone applying to UK universities and things like that? So quickly speaking, from a INCRED standpoint, I do see a small uptick in UK. I think the UK government department of late has also said that students are able to stay back in the UK after their graduation and work, which was a facility which was taken out of the picture for several past years. Now they have introduced it, and UK does have an established higher education system. So there is some interest in UK for sure. My couple of warnings are what Sumit said earlier, that if you have made up your mind to go to a Georgia Tech or Illinois or some other university in Europe to study your specialization, do not go to the UK simply because they are offering job opportunities now. It has to be a thought through process. Also, one small word of caution from my end is surrounding UK is the Brexit issue is still off and on going on there, and we do not know how the full impact of Brexit on UK economy. We will understand it in the days to come, and therefore, and also Boris Johnson, who's the current Prime Minister of the UK, is making some random statements which are creating some havoc in the minds of policymakers and investors and things like that. So from those angles, slight caution on UK, but again, I think UK has had a good history of higher education and very good colleges and all of that, and now they're changing their immigration to let you stay back and work for some time. So all of that will make UK a more attractive option than it used to be in the past years. Sumit, anything from your side on that?
I would say if it's a STEM, then US. I think I don't. I think I would still put all my money behind STEM degree US, and I would think that in London, as a lender also, you would agree on that part, that you would have seen the trends. In fact, ROI is something is going to be concerning the lenders even more than anyone else, and you would see that US has been performing fantastically on.
And I still think they'll continue to perform even after Corona.
Yeah. So STEM degree, I would still say it's going to be US. I don't think there's any competition on that front.
I more or less agree. My data, my experience in the US, my 10 years of looking at the US as a market for students to go to gives me, even with the US being the highest infected country of coronavirus, even with that, US gives me most comfort in terms of post-work job placements compared to all other countries. Still.
Also, I'll tell you one thing that why US is so much in the news is because first of all, it's sensationalism because of that. Second thing, there are maximum number of students who go to the US. That is why we are so much well aware about the situation in the US. Now, if tomorrow if someone says that I want to go to some European country, do you like? I would like to ask if anyone who says I want to go to European country, what are the visa for Spain? Can knows that. That's because they're just not aware about it. So do you want to go? But everyone is aware about H1B because that's something which is there everywhere. So that is why something like an H1B making changes in H1B is becomes a big news. Just imagine some country, some European country making changes like that. It's not even heard of here because it does not so many. So that is why people think that okay, this is such a big change. US is no longer the same.
Yeah.
Sure. Every time there has been some kind of news coming in. I can tell you that this is not just a Trump thing. You go back to Obama time, there were news at that time as well. And you go to prior to that Bush time, there were news at that time also. So every time, and even the senior Bush used to make some comments which would always be populist. So these things keep coming, and India does follow US media very well. So that is why we are aware about all these things. Whereas it does not certainly mean that it's not a great option still. And if it was not, I would so many people still going to the universities and making great lives out of themselves. If you see, a lot of people have had a great jumpstart in their career, in their social stature because of going there. So I still feel that it's a great country.
Yeah, very pertinent points. I do agree to all of it. Let me, for the sake of closing this session quickly, let me move on to the next question and not talk of the USA anymore.
we can have another session on that. I'm sure we will have.
We can do a session on just US actually at one point.
Yeah.
So good. No, but one thing I want to add there is that I think there is a theory, and that I believe in, is that the US is such a powerhouse in the world. Is because of its collegiate system. The university system and the kind of research and development going on there is so fantastic that it really impacts the US in becoming a powerhouse of global technology and business, in the long run. So that's all I want to add there. Next question from Rohan. Next question from Mr. DSPPR is, will deferring students affect the possibilities of intake for new admits? So good question. And if I understand it correctly, you are saying that if a lot of students defer their intakes from this year to next year, will the new admits, will their admission chances get jeopardized or get impacted? Any thoughts on that, Sumit?
So again, this is not a situation which has been seen in the past. So we do not have a precedent on this. So it's going to be very foolish for me to comment saying something very much concrete on this part. So what I'm going to say is that what universities are doing, I'm talking to them, and what I can see is that they're trying their best to accommodate as many as possible. So the intake, again, every university is going to have their own way of dealing with this. Some universities are going to have an expanded intake for that specific batch. As I told you, some of them are taking more, like some students in fall in October. So there'll be a lot of such things. There will be some kind of, they will do some make-do provisions for these students, but they will not let it impact much. But again, it's for us to see as time comes and how many students they get, what is the implication of that.
So just to add to that, I think there are 2-3 dynamics here that we should keep in mind. One is, like we earlier said, that enrollments will typically go up after a recession or after some crisis. So there will be some added competition, I think. Plus people deferring it will also. But on the other hand, universities, a lot of, especially US universities, may lose out on their fall 2020 revenue to a large extent, and they will be very hungry to overcome that revenue next year. So they may actually admit more students than they typically do. So it is very tough to say whether new admits will get negative impact due to this development, or they will get a positive impact. But these are the various forces that will guide that mobility of new students versus deferred students. Another point to keep in mind is for Indian students is there is a big war going on between China and US, not a real war, a trade war sort of a thing. Obviously, of late, even India and China are not on the best of terms. Australia is not on the best of terms. And China happens to be the number one sender of students to all these countries, okay? The highest number. And if this political turmoil between China and Australia, US, they continue, I can foresee some decline in Chinese students going to these countries, which means that universities will again want to replace that Chinese supply line with other countries such as India. So if that continues, Indian students will actually benefit from it, you know. So that is another global macroeconomic kind of a factor that may impact next year intakes. I think more or less it'll be wrong for me or Sumit to tell you yes, no here, but whatever knowledge we can give to you to understand your question better is what we have done now. So let me go to the next question. Rohan wants to know, for a session starting in end of September, should I defer now or wait for a month? So right off the bat, Rohan, it depends on your college, course and country, what kind of policies they're adopting, how is the economy recovering from the lockdown, how is the healthcare recovering from the pandemic. So all of that needs to be taken into account before we can give you more pinpointed, guidance. Having said that, Sumit, if you have anything to share on this, please feel free to do that.
This is regarding this.
So should they start the September session or defer?
So I would say, like, Rohan has asked that if starting in September, should I defer now or wait a month? I think you can wait. There's no harm in that. You can see what's the situation, because I think the whole world is on a wait and watch mode. So you could also wait another month, because I don't think universities are also going to be stressing so much on that, and they would be flexible. So even if you have to defer at that time, so you can be wait.
Great. Okay. So Ritik Chaudhary has a similar question. What will you suggest for a student graduating in 21 to defer for a year or to apply this year? So again, Ritvik, I would want to understand which college, country, course, etc. you're talking about. In the absence of that, since you are saying graduating in 21 and starting in 20, so you are talking about a 1-year master's course. Unless this is a 1-year business analytics course in the US, it is probably not a US case. It is probably a UK or a Europe course where courses are of 1-year duration. If it is Europe, masters in mechatronics, okay, Ritik, and which is it, in Germany or US? Okay, if it's the US, maybe you should wait, and defer till next year, or do a combination online course and then go for physical classes from, say, spring of 21 when everything opens up in the US. If it is Germany or, say, a European country, okay, mainly Canada or Germany. So Canada and Germany are safe bets. I don't see why you should think about deferring and all of that. As we mentioned, Canada will, they have a favorable immigration system there, and also they have controlled the coronavirus to a large extent in comparison to the US. Germany was ravaged by the virus earlier, but they have brought it under control. Actually, their response was very highly admired, and they look to be bringing everything under control dire dire. So Germany, Canada, if you are planning for a master's in mechatronics, I don't think there is a big reason for you to postpone it. I think that even if you started now and graduated in 21 or 22, like we earlier said, the job market will be very hot, and it will have ample opportunities for credible, talented, hardworking students. Anything you want to say, Sumit, on this?
No, I think you're right about that. That's
okay.
it.
Okay, great. A couple more questions I can take because we have completely overshot our time limit today. I think, let me see. Okay, so Kunal had a question about if I have taken an education loan this April, is there a scope of reduction in loan interest? So Kunal, if you have a loan disbursement in April from INCRED, I am guessing you have not been able to go to that particular college or country because of travel restrictions. My advice to you will be to close this loan immediately, return the funds to INCRED or whoever the lender is, because you're unnecessarily incurring interest charges on that loan and you are not even attending classes. So I would say you should return the funds to the lender, close the loan, and at least at INCRED, when you come back, it's a very simple reapplication process. Whatever PF you have paid and all of that will be transferred to that new loan account that you will create in due course. So this is the advice I can give to you right now in terms of how to handle your loan. And then moving on to say one last question. Okay, couple of questions again. Ritik, is it advantageous to gain internship or job? Absolutely. I highly recommended getting an internship or a job experience before your master's. In between your undergraduation and your master's, you should get it. It has some good advantages, especially with coronavirus. If you're talking about a deferral, the deferral year should be utilized in not watching Netflix all day, but it should be utilized in doing online certifications, learning a new language online, doing an internship or research, or doing some publication, or that kind of activities. Lastly, so last question is, what's the status of Scandinavian universities for fall 20 and what will be for fall 21? I unfortunately cannot pinpoint what all the Scandinavian countries have decided, but Scandinavia as a region has done pretty good in terms of controlling the virus. They have quality education at lower costs because government subsidizes higher education or waves it off. And also countries such as Finland, Denmark, etc., do give the student the ability to stay back and look for jobs. So if you had your eyes set on Scandinavia from earlier, not a bad option to keep your eyes set on Scandinavia. If you had your eyes set on US and now thinking of Scandinavia suddenly because of coronavirus, then not so much of a good option. Anything you want to add, Sumit, to this, or any parting notes? I think we will have to wrap this up very, very soon.
Well, I think that it's been great. I think the session has been really great, and I like the kind of really, I hope it has been helpful for students as well who have given us their time for so much. Let's connect more often and let's have more such sessions for students. So that's great. It's great work what INCRED has been doing. So yep, keep it up. Keep it up. Great.
Thanks for the encouraging words, Sumit. Same to you. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks to all our audience. I hope we were able to give some information, throw some light onto the uncertainties you are facing as a prospective student. If you have further questions, like I said, get in touch with INCRED through incred.com or YOCED through yoced.in. We will be more than glad to help you out with whatever we can. Having said that, good luck to everybody here. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Sumit. Thanks for your help. And surely we will connect more and do some more of these webinars in the coming days. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.